Okay, today we're going to talk compression. This is something that was very confusing to me when I first started with engineering and production. What compression does is it basically is an automatic volume knob that turns down parts of your song when they reach a certain threshold of loudness. And the reason it's relevant is because you might have instruments that are hitting at very different volumes. Think about the drums. You might have a really loud snare crack that's poking out and a really quiet snare crack that's getting lost. What compression does is it enables you to squeeze those two things together so that you're hearing a more even tone. So I'm going to talk today about the 4 basic types of compression and then how to use those across all the important instruments in a song that we have up here. So compressor 1 is FET. I'm usually going to use the 1176 or distressor here. This is aggressive and fast, so use it on instruments that are attacking fast, like drums, for instance. And it smashes things in a very musical way. It's good for adding attitude to vocals, punch to drums, and bass that needs aggression is a good fit here too. Number 2 is VCA. This is really for buses, and rather than thinking of this as actually compressing or squashing the signal, using it very gently and applying even processing to lots of tracks at once, like for instance, all the drums in the drum bus, glues them together and makes them sit nicely in the mix in a more musical way. Third is optical. LA2A is my go-to there. It's smooth, it's slow, it's forgiving. It's got a really gooey, nice kind of analog color that it adds. And the attack and release are automatically determined by the compressor itself, so you can't really screw it up. It's good on bass sometimes, vocals definitely, maybe after an FET compressor, and anything that needs to sit back and breathe. Fourth, the one I use the least is very moo compression. Fairchild is the one that I would use if I do. It's warm, it's thick, they're pretty expensive. They add weight and glue, and you can throw it on the mix bus or the master if you want kind of a record in the 60s vibe. This is generally not a good fit for most metal, which is what I mostly do, but we're going to look at it anyway. It takes a little time to really hear compression, so let's just get into kind of a cheat sheet of how to use it on different instruments. So here I have a song where I have drums bus to a drum bus. Within that, I have close mics bus together, cymbals, overhead mics bus together, rooms, etc. I also have rhythm guitar here. I have lead guitar, I have some synth pads, and I have a bass guitar, and we're going to put compression on all these. So let's start with the drum bus. Drums obviously attack very fast, decay very quickly, therefore we need a fast compressor. And let's just hear what this sounds like with no compression at all for the song with all the instruments in it. Okay, so it doesn't necessarily sound bad, but could definitely sound better. Let's dial these in. So I'm going to start with the kick. I'm going to grab the 1176 here. Let's pull that up. Here it is, disengaged. So somewhat consistent, but we want to catch some of those peaks. So I'm going to engage this. I'm going to use a 4-to-1 ratio. This is determining, the ratio is determining how aggressive the volume knob is. Once you hit the threshold, 4-to-1 on this 1176 plugin is the least aggressive. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to play around with the attack until I'm capturing the transient, but smoothing out the dynamics of the kick, play around with the release, play around with the input knob until I'm getting between 3 and 5 decibels of gain reduction on the kick. Some folks like to be way more aggressive. I like it there because it still sounds organic. And then we're going to play with the output so that it sits nicely in the song. There we go. It's really gluing in with the bass guitar, which I like. Let's A/B it real quick. Overpowering the bass a little bit there, and then when I hit the button, you'll just hear it kind of fit right in. Okay, that's nice. Let's go over to snares, and we're going to apply the same principle and dial it the same way. Only difference is I might be going as high as 6 or 8 decibels of gain reduction for the snare to really get that smack and crack in the song. I'm also going to do an 8-to-1 ratio. I'm cool with higher, more aggressive compression here. Okay, that's feeling good to me. Let's jump over to the toms. Some people will use VCA or optical compression on toms, I like to keep it simple and just stick with the 1176. And I'm going to, again, go to like 6 or 8 decibels here. Let's slide over to a part of the song that has a bunch of toms so that we're not waiting around here. There we go. Okay, that sounds good to me. Let's go back to the fun part. Okay, cymbals. So here's my cymbal bus. This is for the close mics on the ride and the hi-hat. I usually don't compress this. If you're going to, keep it really gentle. You might use an optical compressor here that's going to just kind of make it more of a wash. And when I'm throwing optical on, I'm really only going to be looking at 1, maybe 2 decibels gain reduction. And you're going to have to turn the gain down because it always pops pretty loud once you engage this. And for the cymbals, I'm going to be listening for the crash. That's probably where it's going to peak. And I'm liking this level here. I'm peaking around -2 decibels. Okay, that works. Same deal on the overhead mics. I like to be really gentle if I'm doing any compression. We'll just do it for the sake of the exercise here. 1, maybe 2 decibels of gain reduction. See, I'm peaking pretty high on those crashes, so we want to dial it back. Okay, really gentle. All that's doing is help control the splash. Now the rooms are where you can get really aggressive because you want to really bring those low parts of the signal up into your face on the room so that you put some intensity behind the kit. And this is what makes it feel like you're in a room with live drums. So I'm going to smash this. I'm going to go all the way up to 20-to-1 ratio. Let's start with the input all the way down, and then we'll play with it until we start to hear those room mics gluing the drum kit together. Pretty fast attack here as well. So that's really just turning up the aggression of the drum kit. I'm going to pull back the fader a little bit. Okay, so we just covered how to use FET compressors and also optical compressors on drum tracks. Let's hit the bus now. My go-to bus compressor, it's a VCA compressor, is the API 2500. I like to be gentle with this. Putting all these lights on green makes it more gentle. I'm going to drop the ratio to 3-to-1. Some people really slam the drum bus. I like it to feel organic and human, so I'm going to do a gentle ratio. If you wanted to be more aggressive, you could do 4 or 6. I'm going to slow the attack down, and I'm going to make the release as fast as possible. So the goal here is not to heavily compress the drums. It's just to glue them into the mix a little bit. So let's dial this until we're seeing maybe 1 to 4 decibels of gain reduction, and then we'll A/B it. Okay, so I'm liking it at 3 decibels. I'm going to unlink the left and right here. Let's hear it with no bus compression and then with bus compression. And it's subtle, but it really just kind of sits in the mix. That's really the goal. I'm actually going to uncompress my overheads and cymbals because I don't really like what that's doing. Like I said, I rarely do that. All right, let's move on to bass. So bass is another one where you could have a soft or rotten note and then really booming loud notes. You want to even this out. I usually, again, I'm going to use the 1176 here. As you've probably noticed, this is my workhorse. I'm okay with an 8-to-1 ratio and a really fast attack. I just want to let that pick attack through. So let's dial this into taste, and I'm probably going to be looking at 3 to 5 decibels of gain reduction. And what you should listen for is the bass guitar and the kick drum kind of becoming one. I'm happy with it here. Let's A/B it. There we go, nice and subtle. All right, let's move over to guitar here. I have my plugins on these different tracks and buses. I just took the compression off. So one thing to just say right off the bat is I do not like to compress individual guitar tracks. And the reason I don't do that is because I'm usually dealing with high gain guitar like this. And what's happening is the gain and the saturation is already compressing the signal. You can see it's pretty flat. So if you compress it further, you're just going to turn it into mud. It's going to lose all of its ferocity. Same is true of the leads. I do not like to compress them, generally speaking. If I'm doing some tremolo stuff, I might grab an optical compressor like the LA3A, the counterpart to the LA2A. Let's just play with this a little bit. And all I would do here, just like I would do with any other optical compressor, is 1 to 2 decibels max of gain reduction. And again, only on the lead guitars where, there might be a lot of dynamic variation in a solo, for instance, right? So let's solo that. I'm just going to dial both of these guitar tracks to taste. I think just 1 decibel there. Let's hit the other one. Sounds a little better with 2. Let's fit it into the mix. Okay. And I have my rhythm guitar and my lead guitar bus to a total guitar bus. This is the one place that I might consider compression. And again, I'm going to do the bus compression with the 2500. Really, really gentle. In this case, only a 1.5 or a 2-to-1 ratio. The slowest attack, the fastest release, because I don't want to squash the guitar at all. I just want to give it a little musicality, a little color, and help it fit into the mix a little better. So let's dial this. And watch the needle. I'm going to basically get to a place where it's just starting to jump, maybe up to a decibel gain reduction. That's just tucking it into the mix a little bit better. Okay, let's move on to vocals. Vocals are an area where I'm generally going to use 2 different types of compression, and I'm using, screaming vocals here, so I want to make sure that I'm, getting really aggressive with these so that they're jumping out of the song. Here's what it sounds like uncompressed. So a little thinner than I'd like. I'm going to start with the 1176. This is my workhorse for compressing vocals, and I might go up to 6 to 8 decibels of gain reduction. For metal like this, maybe an 8-to-1 ratio. Oh, and my general approach is fastest attack as possible. I don't like that plosive, loud sound at the beginning of a lyric. So I'm going to just automatically grab it right out of the gate with a really fast attack. Into the trench together. Okay, we're starting to get there. I'll just bring in my backup vocals. Actually, here, let's hit that second stage. So that's one level of compression at the track level, the 1176 doing the heavy lifting. Then I'm going to layer in some LA2A just to catch the remaining peaks. Again, like 2 decibels of gain reduction here. Okay, starting to sound a little more musical. On my backup vocals, I just have the distressor. This is the other FET compressor I'll use. Fairly high ratio, really high gain reduction, because I really want to pin those backups in place. Okay. And then last but not least, I'm going to throw the trusty API 2500 on the entire vocal bus. Let's hear that. I think I'm liking it at like 3 decibels gain reduction. Let's just level this correctly. There we go, starting to fit nicely into the mix. And last but not least, let's just hit on VCA compression really quick. Fairchild is the only one I use. I usually don't use one at all. And what I'm going to do is push the threshold until I start to see the needle jumping. If I make it all the way to 10 and the needle's not jumping, then I start to layer in some input gain. And I'm just going to do that until I get 1 decibel gain reduction on my pad. So here's what the pads sound like with no compression. Now let's layer the compression in. Boom, 1 decibel right there. Let's put it in context. Getting some artifacting there. Let's increase our buffer size. And then we're going to listen to everything in context with compression, and then we'll call it a day. So while that's loading, those are the 4 types of compression: VCA for buses, FET for fast, aggressive compression, optical for slower, gooier compression, Very-Move for, general kind of analog warmth and bus compression. And here's what it sounds like all together. All right, see you next time.